Okay, in this video we want to initialize data on startup. So remember, we're working with an H2 in-memory database that is going to get created on startup and it's going to go away when we shut the application down. So what we want to do here is we are going to create a new package. I'm going to come up here and say new package. We'll just call it Bootstrap, like so. And I'm going to create a new class. I'm going to call that Bootstrap Data. And this is going to be a Spring component, so I'm going to annotate the class using component. So that is a Spring stereotype to indicate that I want the Spring context to detect this and pick it up. We will be covering the Spring stereotypes in a future lecture, but for now it's important to just go ahead and mark that as a component so that when we start the Spring application, this will be picked up. And I'm going to say that this implements the command line runner. So this is an interface provided by Spring Boot, and basically it says when it detects this type of component on the class path, or in the context, I should say, to pick it up, and it's going to execute the run method. So this is going to get picked up and run every time that Spring Boot starts up. If it finds a class in the context that implements command line runner, it's going to execute that. So what we can do here is we want to be able to work with the repository. So we do private final. So it's best practice to declare components from the Spring context as final so they cannot get changed. And I'm going to do the same private final for the book repository. And then I'm going to use IntelliJ to create a constructor to bring both those in. So by doing this, by providing a constructor, so this is the only constructor on the class, what's going to happen when Spring starts up, it will see that constructor. It will also see that it's got a author repository and a book repository. So on startup, it'll automatically auto-wire in the implementations of the repositories that are being provided for us by Spring Data JPA. So let me get this up off the bottom of the screen a little bit. So now what I want to do is create an author called author Eric. Set first name. So Eric Evans is going to be our author. And let's create a book. I'm going to call that book DDD. It needs to know which book to bring in. We want the one out of our domain package. Set title. Call this domain driven design. And this is an excellent book. If you have not read it, it is one of those classic computer science books. And we'll set the ISBN to a value, just we're adding in a value for that, so that's not important. So now what we want to do, I'm going to scroll this up a little bit. Let's say author equals author repository. Let's say save Eric. And what's happening is when we save it, when we save that author, a new object is returned by the repository interface. So it's generally best practices to take the saved value back. And we'll say DDD saved equals, and we're going to say DDD. So that sets those up. We can save those two. And I am going to create one more book. I'm going to pause this to save just a little bit of time. So I added a second book here. And you can see here I've got a new author, Rod Johnson, that is the founder of Spring Framework. And this is going back a bit. When the first version of Spring came out, you can see Rod wrote a book called J2EE without EJB. At the time, people were not too happy with the verbosity of EJB, so it took a lot of ceremony to get that done. So at this point, we are saving two entities, actually two entities in each. So we are saving two authors and two books, but we have not created the association between those. So to do so, and I'm going to set this up so you're going to see a common error when I do this. So what we want to do is say Eric saved, get books, add, and we want to go ahead and add in the DDD saved book. And then also for Rod saved, get books, we want to add in the no EJB. So what this is doing is building that association between the books. We created the authors, we created the books, but we did not build the association between the two. So what we're doing here is providing that. So what we want to do also is I'm going to do a system out here. Let's say in book bootstrap, and we'll also do, scroll this up a little bit. I'm going to say author count like so. And here we'll go to the author repository and we'll get the count. And then we'll also do, and we'll say the book repository, get the count. Now we are going to get an error here, and I want to show you a very simple workaround on that. So let's come in. I'm going to come up here, and there's two ways that you can run this from IntelliJ. One, you'll probably have this up as a Spring 6 web application, and you can just click there, or you can come here, right click, and say run. So I'm just going to come up here and say run this. And again, I'm expecting this to error, which it did, and we are getting a null pointer error. So what's happening is we are getting the null pointer error because the book property, that is null. And if we wanted to, we could set that in our debugger, come back and run that. You can see Eric saved, so we're going to take a look at Eric saved. So you can see that the saved object does have an ID property, so that was set by the database there. But the book is null, so that value is null. So I'm going to go ahead and stop that, minimize this, and let's come back over to our books. You can see we're setting this up to, we have a set, but we don't set a default value. So one of the easier ways around this is to initialize that. Okay, so we're going to set the initial authors to a new hash set, so that will contain a set. And then also for the author, we'll say equals new hash set like so. And now let's go ahead and run this again, and we should see a much different result. So here you can see in Bootstrap, we have an author with count and a book with count. So let's clean up that spacing there. Forgot to add a little trailing space. That will take care of that. So we'll get a better output. So what we change here, I'm going to go ahead and stop the application. What we added in this video is we added in the Bootstrap data. I'm going to scroll towards the top here. Bootstrap data implements command line runner. We are annotating this with a component annotation, saying that this is a Spring component. So when Spring looks at the packages, it'll see this, and then it will create a Spring bean for it. And when it's wiring it up, it only has one constructor. Remember, Spring Data JPA is giving us the implementations for author repository and book repository. We just wrote the interfaces for that. Spring Data provides the actual implementation. Those are loaded in the context as a Spring bean. When Spring detects this component, it sees the constructor, says that, oh, we have to auto-wire these components in. And then with command line runner, we have to implement this run method. You can see here, I create a new author, Eric, create a new book called DDD, call the repository. I save both of those. And then the object return does have an ID. So remember, the H2 in-memory database is setting the ID property on both of these. So we get an ID property on the saved ones. I do the same operation with Rod Johnson, the founder of Spring Framework. Create his book, save it, then we save the two, and then I create the association for Eric. Eric saved, I pass in the DDD save, so the saved instances I'm working with, passing those in, and we initialize the books to an empty hash set so that we can use that add method. If we don't do that, you saw that I got the null pointer error. And when we complete this operation, we are creating the association between Eric and Eric's book, Domain-Driven Design, and also Rod's book, J2E Development Without EJB. We complete the persistent operations, and then I'm just doing system out so that we can see the counts. And see, again, I'm using the repositories, the respective repositories, to see the counts that are loaded. And in each case, we saw that we got 2 authors and 2 books, and now the authors and the books are properly associated. I did realize I made one small mistake here, and what I did is I added the books. So I added the books to Eric save and Rod save, but what I did not do, so I did not persist these. So I altered the objects, but I did not persist them. So what I need to do is come up here auth repository. Save that entity like so. And then also we want to do that with Rod. So that would actually save the new book association. So let's go ahead and verify that this still does run. Make sure that we run this without errors. And now we can see that that does in fact run properly. So we are doing that last step of persistence. So without adding these two lines here, we would not have persisted the book association. So very important step that we did there. Almost overlooked that, but a very, very easy thing to do. But coming up in the course, we'll be focusing more on testing to prevent errors like that. Like I said, it is an easy thing to do, but as we progress through the course, we'll start introducing additional testing to prevent making simple errors like this, and we'll verify that our persistence operations are working as we expect them to.